Darren, would you like to start?
Thank you, Greg, and thank you for the organizers for this opportunity to sit here talking about science out of China, innovation out of China, and for global patients. I'm Darren G. I'm the founder and the CEO of Elpiscience Biopharma. I'm not a stranger of Basel. I used to be a global head for business development for Roche. The other day, I was jogging along the river, and I remember a lot of fond memories between the two sides of the pharma giants in Basel. Really happy to be back here and now talking about the cross-border deals involving China.
Thank you very much. Please,
Sure.
Paul.
Good morning. I'm Paul Hermant. As you can see, I'm a corporate and commercial partner at Bird & Bird, based in Brussels, but with a big emphasis on Chinese work. We have 4 offices in China, and I've been representing Chinese companies trying to collaborate or invest in Europe, or reversely, European companies trying to invest or collaborate in China.
Thank you. I'm Sanja Tomovska. I'm a co-founder and CEO of Quant Biomarkers, the company that is developing early diagnostic to replace the standard of care in detecting chronic kidney disease. So our objective is to target patients at risk with cardiometabolic disorders, and to, in that sense, prevent the organ also advance precision medicine. So a few words about myself. I'm a molecular biologist. Actually, I did my PhD here at the University Hospital in Basel. We heard yesterday that the Basel ecosystem is highly growing, working on the unique tissue array technology together with Roche in early diagnostics of cancer. So I spent over 20 years in the corporate career at Novartis, Roche, and Abbott, developing and marketing products across geographies. I have a quite tied to China in the region because I think it was one of the first groups who developed and tried to establish the group of Novartis in China. But also, as a matter of fact, at the moment, I'm also at the advisory board at Hermant, who is a private equity group who owns about 45 clinics across the Greater Bay Area. And that's really my connection to the ecosystem. Thank you.
So good morning, everyone. My name is Ximing Ding. I work as an investment manager at Pureos Bioventures. So Pureos is a life science biotech VC based in Zurich, Switzerland. So our first fund is around $200 million. We have a portfolio of around 16 companies, and we are currently investing out of our second fund. So myself, I have a background in molecular biology. I did my PhD and short postdoc and joined the investment team of Pureos around 6 years ago.
Thank you very much. So now we start with the panel discussion. So of course, it's a question about innovation and cross-border deal making. The first question I would like to address, Darren. How about the innovation from being made in China now, about your company?
My company is a small set of a mirror of reflecting the whole industry out of life science, pharmaceutical innovation. I think Helen summarized really well on the trend is essentially in licensing of China market that peaked in around 2021 and out licensing out of China for the world. If you look at the history, it's just amazing. My company, we set it up 2017. We work with Lineage Ventures. Essentially, over past 7 years, we raised over $250 million. The initial phase was licensing in, and actually we ride on that curve that Helen showed. We in-licensed 3 products for China market from 2 US public companies, essentially in the place of cancer immunotherapy. But in the meantime, we were wrapping up innovation, research, discovery, and clinical development ourselves. So last year, we signed a really good deal with Astellas as out licensing. based on one of the transformative platform, we call it bispecific macrophage engagers, which is game-changing towards T-cell engagers as a bispecific. So we signed a $1.7 billion deal with Astellas for up to 4 molecules for global development. So it's really amazing to see the transformation from science, from people, from inward looking for China market. Now the whole industry actually due partly to the capital constraint. This couple of years, a lot of outward looking for the product going out of China for the world. And we are just, as I said, one small mirror of the whole industry, but this trend will continue.
Thank you very much. Excellent. So I would like to ask Paul about your advice, your guidance regarding European companies when they're making deals or talks with Chinese counterparts. What would be your take?
I would perhaps just add one layer on what Darren just said about innovation, because the legal word for innovation is IP. And I still meet people who are not yet fully convinced that IP is properly protected in China. And there are still issues, I'm sure. But I remember that 10 years ago, we did a survey together with the economists about the level of IP protection in China in the life science sector, especially. And it turned out that actually the accidents happening in terms of counterfeiting and not respecting IP rights properly was about at the same level as in most other jurisdictions. So that was an eye-opener. And I think nowadays, and it's probably to some extent linked to the phenomenon Darren and Helen just before mentioned, IP is actually now produced by China even more than it is used by China. And therefore, very logically, IP protection has improved in China. I just wanted to add that just in case someone would still have in mind that IP and China are not compatible. How to deal with China, and actually I can make a point in both directions. The previous panel mentioned more politely than I will do the expression of geopolitical factors as being an impediment, and lawyers obviously are trained to be negative and therefore to only look at difficulties. I would call it protectionism, and unfortunately protectionism has increased in both directions, and that's probably to some extent one of the biggest challenges. On the other hand, I want to put this in perspective. We've now established FDI walls around Europe, sanctions, counter-sanctions in China. But when you look at reality, and I'm not focusing on life science because reality is a bit different in AI, microchips, and etc., where FDI restrictions are really applied. In life science, when you look at statistics, the number of refusals of investments under FDI regulation or foreign subsidy regulations is minimal, less than 0.1%. So in reality, protectionism, luckily, is not used too much against life sciences project. And therefore, that big impediment is probably overstated, certainly in life science sector. This being said, China is a robust market, is a complex market, but not much more than other markets. And therefore, my general piece of advice, if you want to envisage collaborating or do something in China, is to know very well in advance what you want to do, not underestimate the people you're going to speak to and negotiate with, and then adapt. I'm really convinced, and Helen mentioned it in her presentation, that the best approach to work in China is a collaborative approach. And therefore, it's going to be much easier, certainly using some of the new tools to discuss with Chinese parties, to have in mind something more collaborative than starting negotiations just with the idea of acquiring a company. That's more difficult to do in China. And if you have the right mindset and you are creative enough, you think about what you want to achieve, usually you can do something. You will, the previous panel mentioned it as well, you might have to accept the idea that you won't have a global deal with a Chinese company. But if you secure anything outside of the People's Republic of China for the rest of the world, believe me, it's already going to be something huge for you.
Thank you very much. Excellent. So, Sanja, I would like that you add on Paul's take regarding China and also add on Darren's input. And you recently went to China, so tell me your experience.
Yes. So as Paul said, really, I think what it matters certainly for every market, there has to be a market fit for a product you're developing. So when deciding the strategy and going to Asia, obviously you need to understand what will be the path forward, and is this really a fit to the market? I think that would be my first recommendation in really going to the Asia market. On the other side, yes, I have been truly had a pleasure to be at the group of a special delegation of the Swiss government and the Venture Lab, who did a roadshow over China. With most of their development centers in Hangzhou, in Sanja, so then Beijing, as well, Hong Kong. So I have to say that it's impressive to understand how quickly China developed. At least for me, I have been there 10 years ago, as I said, being part of Novartis. But it's amazing to understand how quickly the system has developed, specifically in the technology space. So what matters, and therefore, I think with the Hong Kong Invest, we have a great partner to just understand the channels, how you can enter the Asia market. And I think having a Hong Kong as a spring bread, which really gives an opportunity to understand how the ecosystem functions, I think it's the first step to understand. So I would agree with Paul that one needs to understand, is there a fit to the Asia market of the product and the company that you want to base there? So for Quant Biomarkers, I have to say, for us was very clear. So we have an early diagnostics in a disease that it's 700 million people globally, but 100 million just based in China. So therefore, we decided to base our company in Hong Kong and develop the strategy and the product there directly with the support of a local ecosystem, and launch the product in China. So I think there, again, right, and now we are building the ecosystem with Gregory and the team, and there are many supporting hands in that. So that would be, my recommendation and experience. Also, one more thing that I wanted to add in terms of the deal making, because we say the deal making, right? That's really the word of the panel. I think it's an amazing that despite of these geopolitical tensions that we say, I think there are many innovations, specifically latest, and then Pureos may also add some of their side. It is the Medici investment round of 62 million that leaded for 3Bio, which really shows that there is a lot of great science also coming out of China.
Thank you very much. Ximing, I would like to ask you about your interests. I mean, you are in Switzerland, you know China. So how's your pathway to Hong Kong, China? And could you imagine to invest in Chinese companies?
Absolutely. Maybe first one comment on Sanja's point, and also Darren mentioned this about Chinese companies now trying to out-license their assets. So we see very, very good assets coming out of China. Just to mention one area, for example, in the ADC field, if you look at the recent deals that European ADC companies closed with Chinese companies, they have the best-in-class conjugation platforms, and they also, get international, royalties and upfront payments. So I guess there is tons of potential for collaboration between European and Chinese companies, and also in terms of CDMO providers. I think just to mention WuXi Biologics, they are doing a great job in China, also supporting European and American companies. So to facilitate their drug development process. So I really see there's a lot of potential for collaboration.
Extra question, Ximing, about, I think we talked before about the idea about fund of funds, syndicate. So how's your take, how's your interest when you're touching Hong Kong, China?
Yeah, so I think Hong Kong is a global financial center, and I think many of the Asian companies would like to file IPO in Hong Kong. So we're invested in a Singapore-based company called Hummingbird. They not only work with some of the China-based CDMOs, but they are also considering maybe raising funds in Hong Kong. So I think also to mention that one of our portfolio companies that is based in Switzerland, Atlantis, they're also running clinical trials in Hong Kong, and the government is doing a lot now to boost the ecosystem, the biotech ecosystem in Hong Kong. And there are very good hospitals in Hong Kong, especially in oncology. You really find the patients, based on their genetic markers, and you also receive quite some government subsidies for running clinical trials in Hong Kong.
And if I met end of this, on the clinical trials are of course important for biotech, but then on the diagnostic side, you would like to have an access to biobanks to Asian patients. So this is really where the Hong Kong Science Park offers a range of opportunities in that sense for you to get access and do development of your clinical trial. So I think there is a waste. I think that for me was also a big discovery, I have to say, because there is a lot of investment from the local government. In addition to this, to all the entrepreneurs who eventually have interest to have their presence in Hong Kong and develop the products for the Asian market, there is a technology development fund around 3 billion who truly invest and help the new companies to settle down and conduct the research.
Thank you very much. So Darren, can we also talk about macro level? Macro level is like creating a better bridge between Switzerland and China, like we did before?
Opportunities are big. Out of two reasons, I guess. One is innovation coming from China is actually breaking the world. This is really high level. But the way of breaking the world actually got to, in some way, being blocked by geopolitical situations between US and China. And I can see whoever wins the next presidency situation could only get worse than before getting better. So I think between Switzerland, Europe, and China is really this harbors a huge opportunity, really for bilateral collaborations. China is one country, but when I say the innovation itself breaking the world, I give you 3 examples on this. I'm in the field of cancer immunotherapy, and cancer immunotherapy actually in the past, I'd say 5-7 years, has been on the low end of the whole excitement because after PD-1, there's no single molecule can beat it. And a lot of disappointments out there from Roche, TIGIT, and also LAG-3, all those people working on it, if you know cancer immunotherapy field. Until probably 3 months ago, there's one molecule out of China from Akeso in collaboration out-licensed to Summit. This is called Bevacizumab. It's a PD-1 and VEGF bispecific antibody. It's actually, if you look at news, it crushes Keytruda, which sold 25 billion just last year in overall response rate. In PFS, it's actually people expecting OS is going to be a lot better too. So this one single molecule now beating Keytruda in the whole immunotherapy field really provides such a big excitement around the world. So that's one example. Second example is Carvykti. This is anti-BCMA CAR-T invented by Legend Biotech out of Nanjing of China, and in collaboration with Janssen, Johnson & Johnson, now is the best CAR-T product in the world, the best selling, is the best growth, the best selling, and beating the first molecule, Abecma by BMS and Bluebird, from efficacy, from safety, everything. So a lot of skepticism, like Paul was mentioning, when in early days, people say IP protection, data protection is good. when Johnson & Johnson saw 100% response rate out of IIT, out of China for this CAR T, that was 7 years ago, they believed it. Nobody else actually believed in it until they did full due diligence. And now the molecule is positioned to be a $9 billion peak sales in 5 years. So that's where the innovation coming. And I'm sitting here. Greg asked me about my company. We're developing bispecific macrophage engagers, which would be a direct contender to T-cell engagers, given there's no side effects of cytokine storm versus T-cell engagers when killing tumor, but killing tumor completely in head-to-head comparison. So I come back to macro level on the opportunity for Swiss biotech working with China, innovation, funding, and market. I see this really in the current geopolitical situation between US and China getting more and more tense. There will be a lot more collaboration opportunities, but it takes some educated risk to really venture to the ground and to get connected. But then the sky is the limit.
Thank you very much. So I would like to ask Paul, because I like the term you said, when you deal with Chinese counterparts, you have this kind of friendly negotiation. So it's not so, the glass is not half empty, it's half full. So can you add on about your experience? What can you give the guidance to Swiss European companies talking to Chinese counterparts?
Well, I already mentioned a few pieces of advice, and it's very difficult to give general recommendations because it all depends on whom you're speaking to, what you're discussing about. So I prefer not to be too vague or too general. What I perhaps want to mention as well when you speak to, and that's a new phenomenon perhaps in the opposite direction, which actually is currently over the last, let's say 1 or 2 years, the main difficulty I've encountered in discussing with Chinese companies is actually the opposite phenomenon. We've erected wall around the United States, around the European Union in terms of FDI, FSR protection, but actually what's becoming a pragmatic problem is the ODI protection. So the fact that when Chinese companies, Chinese investors want to invest abroad, it's not as easy as it was before. And we've had to cancel transactions just because they couldn't move the money out of China. Of course, this has been there for some time, but it's implemented differently. And probably the way around, which many Chinese companies had organized, which is to have offshore parking bank accounts where money is available for investments abroad and has already left China and therefore is available, that this has become more difficult to tap into. And therefore, it's something which European companies wanting to discuss with Chinese counterparts need probably to check earlier on than before. However, there are solutions like the offshore funding. ODI approval is sometimes granted, and someone, I can't remember, mentioned the importance of local authorities in China. Some of that is driven by provinces, provincial investment funds or investment funds which are under provincial control. They seem to be able to convince their leaders to more easily grant ODI approval. Something interesting which was mentioned in Helen's presentation as well, it's probably linked to some extent to that, is the idea that Chinese parties probably still understand that there is some level of concern for Western companies, including European companies, about dealing directly with Chinese parties under Chinese law, with Chinese courts being competent. And therefore, having the NewCo type of arrangement where you basically park some of the assets you want to collaborate with or be made available to foreign companies outside of China, having investment funds like Bain Capital and so on investing in those NewCos is probably a very good idea. It solves to some extent the ODI problem, and it's reassuring for Western parties because they deal with NewCo companies established outside of China, where it's easier to deal under non-Chinese law, where it's easier to decide that competent courts will not be Chinese courts. And to some extent, they're already controlled by Western operators or Western investors. So this is really a solution probably to a potential problem.
Thank you very much. So I would like to ask Sanja about, of course, your experience with Hong Kong, because you're related to Humansa Group. So is it helping you?
Yeah. As I just earlier said, I obviously have been already exposed to China and Hong Kong during my time at Novartis. But of course, Humansa is in a way stepping stone, specifically for my company. But in one side is actually opening the door for me to have an access to many hospitals, because it's actually founded by a private equity group that has, as I said, around 45 health clinics all across the Greater Bay Area. So what is good about Humansa, on the other side, they are interested in licensing, of course, European technologies. So this is really where my role as a scientific advisor on their board actually helps me to identify the right technologies that we would like to bring them into China, so that we can improve the healthcare and the services that they offer to Chinese patients. So on the other side, I think they are also, Hong Kong is a very interesting, I have to say now, we heard a lot of innovation coming out of China, but Hong Kong per se, it's having a very special role in China. I think it is almost like a Switzerland in a way. I can see in the comparison. And some of the comments of Paul, I think there recently we've seen a lot of reverse mergers that happening, so that the capital, and as what you said, it's not really easy to get the capital out of China. So I think there is two ways: capital in China and capital out of China. And so in my view, I think one has to truly estimate what are the opportunities depending on the business or the product that you are developing. I think in one side, for me, and for Quant Biomarkers, being positioned as early diagnostics is certainly the health clinics, and the access to that market is quite important. But on the other side, I think it's also interesting for anybody who would like to license to out-license technologies out of Europe, because I think the environment, again, and I think provided by Hong Kong, is still quite safe in terms of IP, in terms of services, very close to the European cultural standards that we have.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to ask Ximing about the additional thing, because we know that Switzerland is excellent, as Sanja mentioned. Switzerland is a comparison to Hong Kong or GBA, like a superconnector. But we're talking now about funding. So what do you think about your take or the opportunities to bring some professional investors from Switzerland and Hong Kong, China together?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So I guess everyone knows that Hong Kong is the financial hub of Asia, but I guess in terms of venture capital and biotech VC, I guess Hong Kong still needs to develop its own talents. And also in terms of investment space, probably if you sit in Hong Kong, you wanna invest not only in China but also consider Southeast Asia. By the way, this region is growing at a very rapid pace, but also Japan. And then Hong Kong is a great city for commercialization. It's a bridge between the West and the East. So for European companies, if they wanna grow their revenues in China, I think Hong Kong is a good first step. In terms of funding, I guess Switzerland, of course, has its traditional industry in wealth management. In the VC space, I would say we are also growing, especially in biotech. We have Pureos in Zurich. In Basel, we have some other VC funds. I guess Hong Kong still needs to do this step, and I think the government is aware of this and is actually actively supporting the foundation of Hong Kong-based VCs, not only to support Hong Kong innovation, but also Asia innovation.
Thank you very much. So I would like to ask Darren about, because we have some minutes left, about your summary, your advice and guidance for people engaging with Chinese counterparts?
Just being a bit provocative here, we talk about Hong Kong as a place in comparison to Switzerland. I think Hong Kong will be a good stepstone to use, but really don't count too much to use Hong Kong's capital or local environment for biotech, because just like Ximing said, the venture capital in Hong Kong for high tech, for especially for life science, still pretty premature. You can probably find more sophisticated investors out of China, although ODI for Chinese currency is difficult, but many of the VCs actually has the US dollar fund, like the VCs. I'm affiliated with the Lead Asia Ventures, which are part of the co-founding of Elpiscience. The ecosystem in China is a lot more complete. So use Hong Kong as a stepstone to access to that ecosystem. That really means the whole chain. Helen talked about whole chain of service, material supply, and also innovation itself, plus funding. So I think use it as a gate, but don't hold the expectation too high. But of course, this guy will do a lot more work to make Hong Kong a lot more vibrant. But be realistic on that. Opportunity is still big.
I would like to add on. Thank you so much, Darren. So I think every hub or place has the pluses and minuses. So I would agree with I call Hong Kong like the Asia for beginners. You know, it's an easy landing. There was some British, UK heritage something style. But before I visited Darren in Shanghai, so I was amazed about the Shanghai Zhangjiang Science Park, and I went to Suzhou. And so China, well, because today the talk is about China, we should talk about several hubs and clusters. So please reach out to Darren, because he's very well connected in China. I think you're belonging to the Bay Helix group. So they are excellent people, studied in America, went back to China. We call them sea turtles, the highway. They know all the things, the best experts. So yeah, that's the combination.
And we learn our hard lessons too.
Darren, maybe you can say something about the China government fund, right? Because, I mean, as we heard, there is a European, there is a Saudi sovereign fund. So China has the same, correct?
Well, probably half of the money for VCs have a government relationship and backing. Out of my funding here, a portion that is a market VC, but it's really attached to a lot of fundings out of China. So driving innovation, that the money part is a big part of it. It's not as easy these days because of the capital markets not strong, but the government, highlight this, the last release from policy in July, still pouring a lot of money into the innovation, and most of money actually going to local government for local government to use. So there's still a lot of money there out of central government to local government. The local government is use it to establish an industrial park and attract life science and high tech companies to come in. Of course, with conditions. With conditions, for example, you need to be there operationally. You need to hire people. You need to have prediction of when you're going to generate income and for tax purpose. But those conditions essentially is negotiable between parties. So that's the bright side of opportunity. And the other side is don't be too reckless to go to one place and just settle down, because there's a lot more underground conditions that you'll find later on when you get in. It's difficult to obligate yourself to fulfill. So it's really a tale of two cities. You can use it when the deal is fair, and actually it can really use it to your advantage by government funding and by government support. But in the meantime, it can be a black hole. In the meantime, to get you sucked in, and it's hard to get out. Similar thing, I guess, in the fair market is Singapore. Singapore has government funding. It's easy to come in, and it's a hell to get out of Singapore after government support. So it's a very similar situation.
Thank you very much.
So the recommendation will be then to find the right partners locally to collaborate.
Well,
What would you say? You know,
Well,
how would
you definitely need to be around if you don't find local partners to really talk to a few parks, to talk to a few governments, and to see their condition. But ideally, yes, if you have someone you can trust out of here, out of Hong Kong, out of Shanghai, it will be a lot more helpful to navigate the ground.
So it's easier, but still, I think what we are just saying, a local presence there into the market will still kind of, increase the chance of developing the product, right, faster for the Asian market.
Oh,
Is that, because I think this is really the, the win.
That's
Of course,
sure.
the financing will always going to be difficult. There will be, as what we heard, right, several of rules that one has to learn about. But getting into the local, being local present in the market, in any bigger market, I think that's the way to go.
Agree. The market's still very big and has a tremendous growth as well. So,
I've got another idea. You decide what you want to do, where you want to do, and then you choose your partners. Because then, of course, you would accept all the conditions linked to financing, because you would be financed for having employees, having a site where you want to be anyway.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, I agree fully.
Thank you very much. My screen is saying 1 minute left. Then I would address Ximing. Yes, give me your guidance. How about the Swiss, your portfolio companies? You introduced Atlantis and Hummingbird.
Yeah.
How come?
So Atlantis, they're developing Claudin-1 targeting antibodies, and they also have ADC programs. They have a program in fibrosis. They have another program in oncology, and so they are running trials. They have centers in Europe, but they are also now setting up some clinical trial centers in Hong Kong. They are very happy with what they find there. The hospitals, they have throughput. You find the right patients, and the data protection and the standards are European standards. With Hummingbird, since they are already based in Singapore, they are based in the region. They also run their trials in Hong Kong. Now they're opening some centers. Before they try to find patients in Australia. Obviously, in Australia, you also get quite some government subsidies. But Australia is, compared with Hong Kong, is decentralized in terms of the medical care system. And now, they open sites in Hong Kong and recruit the patients. And also, what's interesting for Hummingbird is also to find funding in Hong Kong, and also maybe considering going IPO in Hong Kong. So I think the experience has been great until now.
Thank you very much. Now we have the famous 8 minutes left. I will divide it into, let's say, 4 and 4 minutes. The first 4 minutes is like a summary of summary. I could summarize about your talk, but maybe you can also do it by yourself. But I would say quickly, Darren would say diversify. Paul would say friendly negotiation. Sanja is, of course, a fan of Hong Kong and said seeing is believing. And Ximing also recommended to utilize the services in Hong Kong and China with the CMO heroes. Yeah. But could you summarize about yourself, the last word?
Ideas out of Switzerland, if in the world of diversifying, to use the educated labor force in connection with China's resource and the ecosystem of a service will make a splendid marriage, I'd say, for China market and also for innovation driving there to the global market. The people resource tremendous. 10 million graduate from college education each year, and supply of educated labor is big. But original idea out of Switzerland, out of here, out of many of the universities that you can bring to use the market there to drive up new growth. I think that's huge potential. And in that connection, you tap into the resource of capital as well. So I would say, do collaborate and do take educated risk and go there.
Thank you. Paul?
I will actually disobey and not answer your question, but I was planning to tease you as well when Darren stole my idea and put some nuances about what Hong Kong still has to offer. On the one side, because of what Darren said, China has evolved, has booked progress, and there are many things which are currently actually doable in China, or even better in China than they could be done in Hong Kong. And from a legal point of view, of course, I cannot resist regretting that the judiciary has lost some of its independence in Hong Kong, and therefore is probably a slightly less reliable place than it used to be. Now that I've completely destroyed what you had in mind to convey as a message, let me still put the emphasis on the fact that try to incorporate a company paying a few dollars in 1 second in the People's Republic of China, and then try again in Hong Kong. That's the big difference. It's still much more business friendly for many things. Try not to pay taxes in China. Well, in Hong Kong, you don't even need to try not to pay taxes. You don't have taxes, or I'm sketching it a little bit. So there are a few competitive advantages left for Hong Kong.
Sanja?
Just add to your setting up companies. Actually, our company and many we see back to biotech in China actually setting up in offshore, like Cayman Island, British Virgin Island, and holding entity in China is a wholly owned enterprise. They call OFI. So actually, Cayman holding Hong Kong, holding China. So it offers a lot more flexibility. It can be Switzerland holding Hong Kong, holding China, but
I didn't want to depress Greg completely by mentioning Cayman Islands.
Okay, yeah.
Why not? We always say laissez-faire, so it's up to you. So
If
Sanja,
there's a political sensitivity there, right? So,
Yes.
but Switzerland holding Hong Kong, holding China is perfect, legitimate, right?
Okay, so I will go more on the patient side, a part of the business. So I think, for me as an entrepreneur and as a scientist, working in healthcare over 25 years now, I think, first of all, every patient deserves to have innovative drugs for diagnostics. So for me, there is a clear decision that if you want to bring an innovation into Asia, you have to be present in the market. That's the only way how you can equally, access, and what we're hearing today, both from Hong Kong Invest, but for all the participants here today, there is a well-developed ecosystem that can help you either, develop, run clinical trials, develop further your product, having all the support that you need, as everywhere else, as it is in Europe, as it is in the US. So there is nothing different. And I think, of course, I think going into stepping into new territory, always going to require a careful evaluation. Or what do you want to do there? How you would like to organize this? But I think the point is that now is acknowledgement that that ecosystem in Hong Kong eventually has been developed quite well.
Ximing?
Yeah, so for a Swiss company going to Hong Kong/China, I would suggest that first the company you have to know yourself, and then secondly, of course, you have to know your business partner well.